I had always been fascinated by the mysterious allure of the old church on the hill. Its Gothic architecture loomed ominously against the darkening sky, casting an eerie shadow over the town. One evening, driven by curiosity and a dare from my friends, I decided to venture inside. As I pushed open the creaking door, the air inside felt heavy, laden with secrets long buried. The flickering candlelight cast grotesque shadows on the walls, and the pews were cloaked in a shroud of dust. The silence was deafening. I walked down the aisle, my footsteps echoing ominously. Suddenly, I heard a faint whisper, like the sigh of a lost soul. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. There was no one there. I brushed it off as my imagination playing tricks on me. But then, I heard it again, clearer this time. Like a sorrowful plea for help, I turned to leave, but the door I had entered through was gone. Panic gripped me as I realized I was trapped in this haunted church. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. I couldn't make out the words, but the despair in those voices was palpable. Shadows danced on the walls, taking sinister forms that seemed to mock my fear. Suddenly, the candles extinguished, plunging the church into darkness. I fumbled for my phone, using its feeble light to guide me. The whispers turned into chilling laughter, echoing all around me. I stumbled over pews and desperately searched for an exit. That's when I felt a cold hand on my shoulder. I screamed and spun around, but there was no one there. The grip tightened, and icy fingers dug into my flesh. I could see nothing, but I felt a malevolent presence inches from my face. The whispers reached a deafening crescendo, and I knew I was not alone. In a desperate bid for escape, I ran blindly, crashing through unseen obstacles. The laughter followed me, tormenting me, until I tripped and fell, landing hard on the cold, stone floor. When I regained consciousness, I was lying outside the church, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. The church door was closed, as if it had never been opened. I got to my feet, shaken and disoriented, and stumbled back home. The old church on the hill has remained a place of dread for me, and I dare not speak of what happened that night. The whispers from the shadows still haunt my dreams, a reminder of the terror that lurks within the old church's walls. The small town of Blackwood had always been proud of its historic church, Saint Agnes. Its imposing stone spires reached for the heavens, and its stained glass windows depicted scenes of religious splendor. But beneath its grand facade lay a darkness that no one dared to acknowledge. I was a newcomer to the town, drawn in by the church's grandeur. It wasn't long before I started hearing the whispers, the tales of the haunting that plagued Saint Agnes. Dismissing them as mere superstitions, I decided to spend a night alone in the church to prove the rumors wrong. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I entered the churchyard with only a flashlight. The air grew colder, and a heavy silence settled in. I made my way to the altar, where a massive, ornate crucifix hung. Its lifeless eyes seemed to follow me as I moved. I settled into one of the pews, my heart pounding. That's when I heard it, the faintest of footsteps, like someone walking on the cold stone floor. I swept my flashlight around, revealing nothing but the empty church. The footsteps grew closer, echoing through the cavernous space. Panic set in as I realized they were coming from above. I looked up at the crucifix, and to my horror, I saw it move. The figure of Jesus contorted and writhed as if in agony. I stumbled back, the footsteps now thundering around me. The stained glass windows shattered, their shards flying through the air. I shielded my face, but I couldn't escape the rain of glass. The church seemed to come alive with malevolence. The pews shifted and groaned, their occupants invisible but undeniably present. Chants in an otherworldly language filled the air, drowning out my screams. In the chaos, I saw them apparitions of tormented souls, their faces contorted in anguish. They reached out to me with spectral hands, their touch like ice. Desperation overcame me, and I fled towards the exit, but the door slammed shut before I could reach them. I was trapped in a nightmarish realm, at the mercy of forces beyond my comprehension. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the horror ceased. The church was silent and still once more. The shattered windows were whole, and the crucifix hung unmoved. I stumbled out of the church, shaken to my core. The haunting of Saint Agnes was no mere legend, it was a living nightmare. I left Blackwood that very night, vowing never to return to that cursed place. The old church, nestled deep in the heart of the forest, had always fascinated me. Its time-worn stones, an overgrown courtyard, seemed to hold secrets of centuries past. One moonless night, driven by an inexplicable urge, I ventured inside. The interior was cavernous, lit only by the pale glow of the moon filtering through crack-stained glass windows. The air was heavy with the scent of ancient wood and incense. My footsteps echoed ominously as I explored the empty pews. But it wasn't long before I heard them, the voices, ethereal, haunting and beautiful, they filled the church. It was as though a ghostly choir had assembled to sing hymns of sorrow and despair. I followed the sound to the altar, where an ancient organ stood, its keys moving as if played by unseen hands. The voices swelled, and I realized they were singing a requiem, a mournful melody that pierced my very soul. The choir was composed of spectral figures, their translucent forms bathed in moonlight. They wore tattered robes, their faces locked in eternal torment. They sang with a passion that transcended the realms of the living. Entranced by the haunting beauty of their voices, I approached the altar, my heart pounding. But as I drew near, the spectral choir turned their gaze upon me, their eyes empty voids of darkness, the melody twisted into a cacophony of agony. I tried to flee, but an invisible force held me in place. The choir's voices grew louder, their song now a symphony of suffering that threatened to shatter my sanity. I screamed, my voice drowned out by their otherworldly chorus. The walls of the church seemed to close in, their ancient stones pressing in on me. I was suffocating, drowning in the despair of the choir of the damned. In one last desperate act, I clamped my hands over my ears, trying to block out the haunting voices. It was then that I noticed a small, forgotten candle on the altar. With trembling hands, I lit it, and the flame flickered to life. The spectral choir recoiled from the light, their song faltering. It was my only chance. I stumbled towards the altar and held the candle high. The figures writhed and wailed, retreating into the shadows. As the first rays of dawn broke through the stained glass windows, the church fell silent. The spectral choir had vanished, leaving only the faint scent of incense behind. I stumbled out of the church, my body trembling with fear and exhaustion. The old church in the forest held a terror unlike any other, a choir of the damned that sang a symphony of suffering. I vowed never to return, but the haunting melody of their voices still echoed in my nightmares.